Good morning, viewers. I am Dr. Tarang Kapoor. Welcome to UGC lecture. Today's topic of discussion is Introduction to Ethics. I will like to begin with a quote to signify the importance of ethics. In Plato's Republic, Socrates says, and I quote, "We are discussing no small matter, but how we ought to live." This quote summarizes the importance of knowing how to live. Human beings are reflective beings in the sense that we can evolve ourselves in thinking about how we should act. We can reflect on our experiences, learn from them, and try to improve them in future. Since our childhood, our parents, our teachers, elders, and community teaches us, do what is right, be moral, do not do things that are immoral, do not be evil. And all of them emphasize on building good character. There are many stories, mythological narratives, parables, which are shared with us with an underlying moral to make us understand what is it to be a good person, what is a good conduct, what is valuable, in other words. Throughout our life, we explore and understand what ought to be done and avoid what ought not to be done. We face ethical dilemmas in all walks of life. In order to understand the relevance of morals, understand the ethical context, what is an ethical behavior, the importance of agency and situation, I will like to begin with an example of one such ethical dilemma, which is present in our great Indian epic Mahabharata. In Mahabharata, there is an episode from the battlefield where Arjun is reluctant to fight the war when he faces a moral dilemma in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, where the Kauravas and the Pandavas are fighting the war. When he sees that he has to fight his own brothers and relatives and gurus, he is left confused and anxious. He started to think about the consequences the war will incur. Arjun is a Kshatriya whose dharma is to fight the war for the protection of righteousness. But in the battlefield, his duty here demands him to kill his own relatives. Anxious and perplexed, he asked the Lord Krishna, "What should I do?" Clearly, to our commonsensical understanding, not to protect justice will be immoral. Krishna here advises Arjun to perform his dharma, the duty as a Kshatriya, a warrior, the protector of justice. There are so many learnings and understandings we can draw from here in our day-to-day life. Now, when we look at the history of ethics, like other fields in philosophy, namely metaphysics, logic, ethics itself is full of disagreements. Ethical theories are not isolated from the shared world. They influence and are in turn influenced by other fields of studies. Ethical viewpoints have had significance in our everyday life. Along with being important in the personal sphere, they also have a bearing on administration, business, media, engineering, and almost all other professions. In the present times, we encounter several dilemmas. There is an imminent need and urgency to study ethics in the present times to respond to the glaring dilemmas arising through environmental degradation, food crisis, climate change, digital media, technology, artificial intelligence, the intrusion of technology in areas like reproduction, weaponry, among others. The study of ethics provides us with tools of ethical decision making. It equips us with problem-solving skills. In this context, it is important that we develop a deep understanding of the theories of ethics through the philosophical writings in both East and West. A simple and uncontroversial definition of ethics is wanting, and I wish that I can give you that. However, we have to acknowledge that there are several theories, with each of them giving us a different conception of how to live. But are there any similarities between them? These are for us to gather in the course of this lecture. I would like to begin with the task of a philosopher. Philosopher is always engaged with the fundamental question, why? Ethics is concerned with providing justification of rules we live our lives with. So ethics is actually answering the most important question, and philosophically so. That is, how we ought to live and why. In addition to these fundamental questions, there are several other pertinent and interrelated questions like how should human beings relate to one another, what is good in life, are there good reasons for our moral actions, how do others treat us, which conduct is right, which is wrong, which character is virtuous and which is vicious, who is a moral agent, among others. Ethics now, after this understanding, can be defined as a normative discipline then, which is related to the study of human conduct. It analyzes human behavior and our interactions with each other. Now let us understand the difference of these two terms, normative and descriptive studies. Normative disciplines are contrasted with descriptive ones. Descriptive studies actually state facts of the matter, but normative ones make a value judgment about this fact of the matter. For example, let us take examples of two judgments, factual and normative. Factual judgment like X has lied, and normative judgment can be it is wrong of X to lie. Now, X has lied is a mere statement of fact, what the case is. However, it is wrong of X to lie, the second statement about expressing a value judgment with respect to the action of lying. That is, one ought not lie. Normative judgments are prescriptive and therefore it is wrong to violate them. There is a kind of prescriptivity attached. As a normative discipline, ethics then deals with how human beings ought to behave, how institutions ought to behave, how we should live, ought to live, and academicians in the context of academics, how they are supposed to do their research, how scientists ought to conduct themselves, among others. Talking about normativity, we have to differentiate at an early stage about descriptive judgment we just did. Now we are going to differentiate between the descriptive ethics and normative ethics. Descriptive ethics is a non-normative approach to ethics, a descriptive study of morality. So we see that sociologists, historians, anthropologists do not make judgments about simply describing the practice they observe. They actually they are always involving themselves just in doing descriptive ethics. The judgment about how you ought to live, it will be the domain of normative practice. For example, our decision making about how we act in general or in particular instances is called first order moral thinking. That is the descriptive part. Now, what is ethical theorizing? It is second order activity in this sense, as it involves thinking about how we should act, and this is the domain of an ethical theory. To begin with, let us understand certain key terminology here. So these are frequently used terms in understanding any discourse on ethics: morality, virtues, values, freedom of will, ethical laws. So let us begin with understanding what is morality. Morality comes from the Latin word moralis. It signifies a body of standards or principles derived from a code of conduct, custom of a particular philosophy, a religion or culture, or from a standard that someone believes should be universal. It is also referred to as empirical knowledge of moral phenomena in the life of an individual and in the structure and functioning of a society. Morality is the differentiation of decisions, actions, intentions between the ones that are right or good and the ones that are wrong or bad. So, if we put it very simply, morality actually refers to rules and duties that govern our behavior. These rules can be as simple rules as do not hurt people, be fair, respect others, do not lie, always tell the truth, be honest, among others. Now look at the second term, values. Values are our judgments about what is important in terms of end and goal of human life. All our life we strive towards achieving an end. In Indian philosophy, the end is described as moksha, and there are 4 purusharthas given to understand the end and goal in life. Values are desired by people and they are for people. There are several values with which we live our life, like health, wealth, happiness, freedom, equality, welfare, among others. Virtues are required characteristic traits which are desirable for both individual as well as good functioning of the society. For example, there are several virtues, and I'll come to this later in the lecture also, like courage, self-control, justice, temperance, wisdom. Now, ethics, which is the main concept which we are trying to understand here. Ethics draws its origins from the Greek word ethos, meaning character. Ethics systematizes and recommends concepts of right and wrong behavior. Ethical theories include an analysis of basic ethical concepts and principles. In this sense, ethics can also be defined as a philosophical study of morality. So, I have here tried to differentiate between morality and ethics. However, in many places you'll find that the terms are also used interchangeably. Ethics guides us about the right ways of life, our everyday life, by delineating rules, principles, and values. Ethical inquiry is foundational critical analysis and philosophical reasoning about the concepts. It investigates whether morals, values, and virtues work in the real practice or not. So even the practical part of our life is informed by ethics. In ordinary language, at times we also use ethics and morality interchangeably. Now, Michael Brady has suggested that to understand moral rules, we should begin by analyzing common elements between moral rules across communities. Traditionally, moral rules include both negative and positive duties. Let us see the negative duties, and these duties are acceptable across societies. Not to lie, not to steal, not to harm, not to manipulate others. On the other hand, we are encouraged to follow positive duties because they uphold virtues like helping those in need, to be honest, compassionate, promote fraternity and justice. There are 3 common features of moral rules then highlighted by him. First, morality is a system of rules which have prescriptivity as a feature. Moral rules honor overriding moral considerations over self-motivated considerations. So prescriptivity comes out to be a key feature. Second feature is moral codes can be universalizable. Moral codes apply to everyone in the same circumstance. Third feature he points out is moral rules should be obeyed because they are moral rules. For instance, principle of autonomy argues we should not use people as means to other people's end. Or look at the simple moral rule, duty for the sake of duty. So they are obeyed because they are holding intrinsic value. Moral laws have this unique character and they carry the idea of an absolute should, which guides our moral consciousness. let us understand the other important concept, freedom of will, in this context. Now, who is a moral agent? Who is the agent who is going to face these ethical dilemmas head on in their life? That agent is understood through the concept of freedom of will or human agency. Freedom is at the center of any discussion on ethics. One cannot be held responsible for some act which he or she never performed. The subject matter of ethics are voluntary human actions. While discussing human beings' freedom, the metaphysical nature of being in a particular philosophical discourse becomes extremely significant. So ethics has to be informed with metaphysics of that system. Aristotle makes voluntariness necessary requirement for moral responsibility. So we have to understand that freedom of will is such an important asset of an ethical behavior. If we have to behave in an ethical fashion, then we have to be free moral agent. If we are not free, then without voluntarily deciding how to do the action, we will be unable to perform the action. And then we will not be seen as free agents. This freedom is extremely important for us to be able to carry forward an action in the way we want it to be carried forward. So voluntariness as a necessary and important element of ethics is central to this understanding on ethics. It is also important to understand that across communities and across civilizations, there have been moral reasons which were found to be important by the philosophers, and based on them they decided the course of their ethics. So we can take examples of Immanuel Kant, utilitarian Bentham and Mill, and feminist ethics to understand this point. Thank you.